Hello, my name is Paetkau and I am the music director of the Saskatoon Symphony. For our upcoming February 14th concert, we are bringing the chamber orchestra back. It's been a while since the SSO has used this format, a smaller ensemble, but it's something that we think is very important and we'd love to share with our audience. The title of the concert is Vivaldi's Gloria, and even though Vivaldi gets main billing, there are actually 4 composers on the program, all of them Baroque. Baroque, of course, is a genre of music from roughly the mid-1600s to the mid-1700s. And even though all 4 of the composers on the program, Vivaldi, Bach, Purcell, and Handel, are from roughly the same time, they are distinctly different. Vivaldi wrote his famous Gloria for the orphanage that he ran. Now, Vivaldi was also a priest, so many or most of his works were actually very sacred and written for the church. But Vivaldi was also a bit of a fad man, in which he not only latched on to what was popular of the day, but he also led the musical community in terms of what was new and where he could go. At this time in Italy, during the Baroque time, music was very quickly produced and very quickly performed. Not like later on where composers took longer in developing their ideas. As a result, Vivaldi was very prolific, and generally his style, which was conducive to the time, is a bit lighter, and that comes through in the Gloria as well, although, of course, it's a very spiritual work that hits home immediately. Now let's go a bit north to Germany, where we have a composer that is almost opposite in style, Johann Sebastian Bach. Bach also wrote for the church and for the town in which he was employed, but his works tend to be a lot denser and not as prone to fads or what was really going on in the day. Having said that, his orchestral suite number 1 that we're going to play was based on French dances that were the craze at the time. Telemann, the great German composer, wrote over 150 of them, whereas Bach, in relation to or relative to the other composers, didn't write as many. But what he did write were very dense in character, and he took lines and themes and developed them a lot more than, say, other composers. And that's a big trait of Bach. He would get deeply into the music and try to work out the themes as much as possible. One of his compatriots, Handel, who has actually spent most of his time in England, Handel, of course, wrote many different styles, including opera, oratorio, and orchestral music, and the one that we're going to perform is Opus 6, number 7, which is purely instrumental. Around 1737-38, Handel ran an opera company, one of 2 in London, and they had a disastrous season. The fickle audience of London just did not want to hear Italian opera anymore, which was what they were producing. Handel had a bit of a breakdown and said, oh, what am I going to do? Well, what he did do is change genres and started writing these oratorios. The Messiah is one of his most famous ones. But within these massive choral works, choral and orchestra works, Handel would put these little orchestral gems in between intermissions and in between movements, not only to attract more concert goers, which of course would pay more money, but then the people that came to the concerts could actually buy the music and perform it at home later on. In the same country, but a bit earlier in this period, was Henry Purcell. Henry Purcell was the most famous English composer ever in history before Elgar. So there was a big span between Purcell and the 20th century. Purcell wrote King Arthur. It's a semi-opera, and it's called semi-opera because most of the main protagonists actually didn't sing at all. They were actors, and the people who sang were lesser characters that sang to these main characters. But one of the pieces, which is purely orchestral and is a very short number, is the King Arthur Shikon. Now, Shikon is a type of music where there's a ground bass, meaning there's a bass line that repeats over and over and over throughout the whole piece. It's 8 bars. There are a number of examples throughout music. One of the most famous examples of a ground bass is Pachelbel's Canon, where the bass just continuously does the same thing over and over. This also happens in King Arthur Shikon that Purcell wrote, but But on top, every 8 bars is this wonderfully new, creative melody and development of a melody that goes on throughout the piece. And so, as we see, we have 4 very distinct composers, but all within the genre of Baroque music. And not only did their personalities decide what they wanted to compose and their influences, but also the circumstances in which they composed them.